Hi, Gift Constable here. This week's product op-ed came from a conversation I had with a product leader who I coach. And we were talking about what it takes to change if you want to make a change in your career. And so let me share just a few things about career changes when you're in product, or and it can actually apply when you're even trying to bake into product. And the key thing to note that I've learned, and you're probably aware of, is that people are very risk averse when it comes to hiring. Too much so, in my opinion. But if you have two candidates, right, and on the left, you've got someone who checks the boxes, but in terms of like the upside they could bring, in terms of their growth potential and that unknown sort of excitement as to whether they could be a star or not. Let's say the person who checks all the boxes is limited upside, and then you get someone who doesn't check all the boxes but seems to have huge upside. Seems to me that 9 times out of 10, most companies go with candidate one, right? Which is a shame, but that's how the world works. And so, if you're an executive, you get typecast. You're the damsel in distress and you want to be the badass power broker, but that can be tough to do. So there's a few things you have to do to think about how you approach it when you want to make a change, right? You've got to ask yourself, where have I seen the movie? So take example for my career. I had stories to tell about fixing extremely broken engineering product and design teams. And I had stories to tell about reinventing business models. And, so to a certain extent, I got typecast as a turnaround guy. But I had seen those movies. And if like you really wanted a safe pair of hands, because you were struggling with those problems, people would be interested in me as a candidate. The other thing you have to ask yourself is you can't make jumps, right? You have to pivot. So you got to ask yourself, where do I anchor? Where am I willing to anchor versus where do I seek change? So let's say I didn't want to do a turnaround, right? Well, okay, where else could be the anchor for my own career? Well, I've done 8 marketplaces, so people at marketplaces would be like, okay, he's a safe pair of hands on that, right? It could be particular domains and industries that I'd worked in, right? So you got to ask yourself, okay, where you can't totally reinvent yourself and it can't be artificial. It has to be like real experience that you have under your belt where you've been a core part of it. You've been a leader. You've driven whatever that experience is. So ask yourself, like, where have I seen the movie, right? Where do I have stories of real strong experience? And what are the ones that I anchor and where do I seek change? The downside of this is I think it limits people. I think people make hiring mistakes, honestly, far too often in being too risk averse. And there's a couple areas that I think are very, very common. One is companies try to get too far ahead of their challenges. A classic one is about size. Let's say you're a $50 million revenue company, you have this aspirations, you're in scale up mode, your growth stage, and you want to bring in that executive who has seen $100 million because you're like, they've been there, right? They're not going to hit a growth ceiling. They've seen it there, so they can help me once we're at that stage. The trouble is companies over-index for that, and they hire people that have been at that 100, $200 million stage, and they've forgotten, well, we're not actually there yet. Like, we need people who are actually really good at where we are today and can help us solve today's problems to get us to 100 million. So if you over-index on someone's seen that particular movie and not your current challenge, another classic one is companies convince themselves that they've got full product market fit, when the reality is that's very much a moving target. And so they're looking for someone who's been highly at scale, but they still have, this is a very classic sort of growth stage startup problem where they think they've got it all solved and now it's about optimization and growth, but actually there are still things that they need to solve. Whatever it is, don't get too far ahead of your challenges, right? And seek to find people who can punch above their weight class and help get you there. Another one is filtering for your own profile. I've seen this very specifically in two examples. One is very large companies where you're at Google or Facebook and you're like, I only want to hire people who have interviewed and made it and worked at Google or Facebook or one of the big tech companies. You're like, well, I'm successful. I'm good. I know I can thrive here. So let me check that box and hire other people like me. The same thing happens in the startup world, right? The startup people are famous for turning their nose up at, for example, people that are coming out of the really innovative consulting companies. They're like, "Oh no, you're a consultant. You're not a startup person." And there's some validity to why you want people who have had that real startup experience. Same thing for big companies, but you just got to be careful that you're not stifling diversity within your own team, and you're not over-indexing on what you're proud of in yourself as you're looking to hire for additional people, right? Because you can limit your team. Another one is a classic one is domain knowledge. People over-index on domain knowledge. What you really want, there are some industries where very deep, there's portions of fintech, there's portions of healthcare, there's a few other areas where it's really complicated, and having someone who has domain expertise means there's one less learning curve for them. The thing is, I think way too many people over-index on domain knowledge. You want someone with a in product. You want someone with a learning mentality, and that domain knowledge is usually not the hardest learning curve to come up. Yeah, it might take a few months, but it's usually not more than that, especially with someone who loves to learn and really throws himself into a problem. So similarly, right? Remember, this is about people like looking at which boxes are we checking as opposed to upside, over-indexing on hard skills. This is particularly important in product management. Saying, oh, I want someone who's done this very specific thing, in mobile, or they've rolled out instrumentation or an A/B testing platform, and that's what we need to go do. And over-indexing on the hard skills rather than the soft skills. But actually, good product managers can be thrown into many, many different domains and many different problems. And what makes them good is that they know how to prioritize, they know how to pull together teams, right? They know how to lead people forward and inspire them. They know how to communicate really well. They know how to drive great decisions. There's a lot of soft stuff that actually really separate out what makes a great product leader or product manager from someone who is fine, but not phenomenal. So be careful there. And then lastly, just to repeat myself, right? Not taking a chance on huge upside, right? Thinking about what boxes am I checking? Is this a safe hire? As opposed to, is this an exciting hire? Now, you can go too far the other direction, but by and large, I see far more people getting really safe and thinking about the boxes that are being checked as opposed to the upside. And I encourage you, if you're in hiring mode, I'd encourage you to challenge yourself. Am I falling, prey to any of these things? Right? These are natural things to do, but am I falling prey to any of these things? And can I challenge myself to ask, is that the right thing to do? You might decide yes, you might decide no. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here. That's just a few thoughts on hiring and career changes in the land of product. Hope it's been useful to you. Giff Constable signing off. You could see these videos on LinkedIn. I also post them over on my YouTube channel. Giff C is my YouTube ID. All right, I'll see you next time.